Hey everyone, my name is Kayla McLeod, and today I'm joined by a very exciting guest, Dario Costa. He's an Italian aerobatic pilot and a current member of the Red Bull air race team. He's been flying since he was 16 years old and has amassed over 5,000 hours of flight time. You may recognize Dario as being the pilot that just flew through not one, but 2 tunnels in Turkey. Thanks so much for joining us, Dario.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure.
We're happy to have you. I'm also joined by the Senior Vice President of the AOPA Air Safety Institute, Richard McSpadden. Richard is a former Thunderbird for the United States Air Force, and he is a current backcountry and adventure pilot. So I thought it might be fun to get us all on a call today to chat about Dario's most recent tunnel flying adventure, as well as our shared love for general aviation. So thank you all so much for being here.
Oh man, I can't wait to talk to Dario. So Dario, thanks so much for your time. So many questions. I don't think we can fit them all in, but I want to start with, I heard a podcast that you gave and you said you wanted this to be a man mission, not a machine mission. Can you talk about what you meant by that and what the differences in those are?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to make it happen thanks to the airplane, but I wanted to make it happen thanks to the preparation of myself. So basically, we didn't touch anything in the airplane except normal and standard air racing modifications. So the plane is an airplane that you can easily race with. So the only thing we had was the shark skin made by bionic surfaces, and that's all. We didn't have anything else modified on the machine beside of the modification that the machine already had for me to do my air shows and all my flying that was kind of daily routine. So I wanted to take the plane and bring it in a tunnel. Like if we are just flying around and then we see a tunnel, oh, let's fly into the tunnel. And so the preparation had to be on the human side and not on the machine side.
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating. I mean, you're a Red Bull air race pilot, aerobatic pilot, and yet at the early stages of this, you did some assessment where you didn't think your reaction time was fast enough. You measured it at like 400 milliseconds and you figured out you needed to be at 250 milliseconds or something. So that's amazing to me. Talk to us about that reaction and how you train to that kind of reaction.
Yeah, well, when we talk about reaction time, we have to be precise on what we mean with reaction time in such a stunt. So it's not a generic reaction time, because human beings are usually fast enough, but not precise. So you have to be fast, but you have to move your hands in the way and in the amplitude you want. So it's not just how fast you react to a noise or to a tap on your shoulder, but it's reacting with the correct action. So it's really reacting with the correct action in that moment. And in the air race, if you calculate the speed of the airplane and the height, when we are going the lowest we can, so let's say 10 meters from the ground, even if it's 15 meters, the red area of the cone, but we are allowed to go in between the gates. So between gate 1, for example, and gate 2, we are allowed to go at 10 meters. In that case, at that speed, 400 kilometers per hour, let's say we need to have a reaction time that is around 100 milliseconds, which is way faster than what we mean. But we don't have to react in a precise way or in a specifically precise way. We just have to put the plane out of the ground. So pull up and go away, or roll and go away, so it's a different reaction time that we need in this case. In this case, I had to be very fast, but very, very accurate, and the cognitive reaction had to be very accurate. So I had to analyze quickly and make the decision making faster than any other occasion I ever had to do.
Yeah, I led the Air Force Thunderbirds for a while and did a lot of high speed, low altitude flying. And we used to talk in terms of time to impact. So at different altitudes, your time to impact in case you make a mistake is pretty short. And in your case, in a tunnel there, you weren't only dealing with time to impact below you, but above you as well. So your time to impact in the tunnel was really non-existent. By the time you made a mistake, it would have been over, right? So
Yep.
that's what you're talking to when you're talking in terms of your precision and your reaction time.
Yeah, so there was almost no margin. So it's what I loved of this idea that I had when I was a very, very young kid, but I didn't know how difficult in reality it would have been. So I just had the idea of going through a solid obstacle and getting out of it. So, but knowing that there is only one exit when you enter the tunnel, and the tunnel is quite long, that's what makes also this project very difficult from a mental point of view. As you said, there is no time to react. So if we have to calculate how fast I have to be to react, there is almost no time. I had 2 meters on overhead, or 3 meters overhead, 4 meters on each side. I mean, it's nothing. It's less than the 10 meters we were talking about before. But the reaction time training was born because when we analyzed when bionic surface technologies engineers analyzed what could have happened beside of making a mistake. So let's take the plane going straight on a perfect ideal path. Then they said, okay, we have to simulate on our computers what will happen aerodynamically when you go into this specific tunnel with your specific airplane. So we had to 3D scan the airplane, and they had to scan they had to reproduce in 3 dimensions the whole tunnel, because the tunnel had shapes, had ventilators, had lights. And they said, well, Dario, you have to be aware that in this, and this points, you will have an increase or a decrease in lift. So I knew exactly, for example, that at the entrance of the second tunnel, I had an increase of lift that could have pulled me up, and the reaction time there to reduce or eliminate this increase in lift, this dangerous increase in lift, was below 250 milliseconds, because the increase in lift would have happened in 250 milliseconds. And that's where I have to be very fast, but at the same time I have to be precise, because if I overreact, I simply touch the ground, which was my worst nightmare, because then I bounce up and I go directly with my head into the ventilators and the lights and all the things that you see there, and I have no protection for that.
So you're talking about all the things that could have gone wrong, and although we don't like to think about those sort of things, this was very important to think about in your situation. So what was your backup plan? I mean, if something was to go a little not the way that you would have liked, would you just pull the power to idle and land it, or what would you have done?
There is no backup plan when you bounce at that speed in that dimension of obstacle, right. You know, so you just have to, the backup plan was to prepare myself properly. And this is the human side of the project. So right. There are tons of things where we don't have a backup. We don't have the option of having a backup plan. And what we have to do is to prepare ourselves as much as possible, with the biggest effort from everybody, not from me only. So from the engineers, from the trainers, from everybody, to make the backup plan being simply the mitigation of all the things that can go wrong. So when we are talking about like sports in general, or like, you know, Formula One, for example, or MotoGP, if you have a problem on a brake and you have no brakes, what is the backup plan? No, so yeah, so you can't have a backup plan for every single meter where you can have a failure of a brake. So we are going in, with this project. I wanted to go into a new dimension of aviation, which is the one that I actually live in. I live thanks to it, which is the sports side of aviation. So we are going into a sport spirit. So we are going. Many people have been asking me, what if tomorrow they will emulate this? I mean, is like saying that people will emulate Formula One drivers. This is not the case. You know, you can't close a tunnel tomorrow. You can't fly to a tunnel just because you saw me flying through a tunnel. But what I hope is that this has been pushing boundaries of training pilots. This has been pushing boundaries of engineering, of aerodynamics, where we can evolve thanks to this project. This is what I hope will push people to do, but not to emulate this is something like this. I mean, it took 29 years for me to get ready for this. It took 14 months of preparation full time to get ready for this. Was not just a daredevil thing, was not just the improvised thing, you know. And this is the whole beauty of this project that I really hope that people will understand, and not just the act itself of 43.44 seconds of flight through tunnels.
Yeah. Dario, when I watch a video of you flying, you're almost perfectly still with your head straight. And I was trying to figure out whether or not you were using your peripheral vision or trying to block out your peripheral vision. Can you talk to that a little bit? Did that take some training to keep your head that still? Talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, we've been training a lot. If you watch the videos, I mean, the documentary will be out in December, where you will see a lot more of my training. But if you watch the video, the BTS, the behind the scenes video, you will see that I'm training with for example, on a balance board, and I'm turning my reaction time on a big screen, where the video of the tunnel is passing the whole time is a video that I took with a car, driving at 270 kilometers per hour, the same path from the same starting position, with a 360 camera on top of the car, which is exactly measured at the same height of my eyes when I'm flying at 30 centimeters from the ground, with my wheels 30 centimeters from the ground. And this training was also with my neck pulled. So there was a trainer behind, and many people, I see the comments of the video, say, why the hell are they pulling your neck? Or what is it, like a dog on a leash or something like that? It's very funny, but in reality, there is a reason for every single thing. So the balance board is, for example, to simulate the floating of the plane, because the plane anyway moves in all dimensions. So the only way to simulate that is not to be with the feet on the ground, but is on the balance board, because I move all around and my core has to work. And this gives me simulates more or less. It's like kind of a simulator. So it simulates the movements inside the plane. The neck is to make it strong, but not also to focus my eyes on my aiming point, so that I can learn, and my neck can learn to keep that aiming point still, whatever the rest of the body does with the airplane. So you see my head still, but in reality my eyes are still, but the rest of the body is moving at the whole time, as you can see from the videos. The plane is not steady.
How about the lights, Dario? The tunnel lights that were just flying by you at that speed, were they disorienting or?
Yeah, the lights were very annoying when I drove the car. So when I did the test last months before going through, and last year when I first drove the car through the tunnel, just a normal car, when I did the first site visit now 16 months ago, the lights are very annoying. And of course, they also have been trained. So I've been training for the lights. And you can see again in the videos and documentary, you will see more. I'm training that exercise with strobe lights glasses, where the trainer is using the strobe glasses as he wants. So he's actually reducing or increasing the frequency, and even blocking out some areas of my sight. And he can do many things with those glasses. Are very, very good. And that's how I train for that disturbing light effect.
Can I ask you about the takeoff? I noticed you were on the far left side of the tunnel when you started the takeoff roll. And as you started, you had some pretty quick, pretty aggressive rudder movements just to get yourself going. And then you had to take off and level off within 1 to 5 feet, I think was your range in there, which is a very unnatural takeoff, right? Can you talk to us about why'd you start on the left side? Why'd we see the rudder movement so quick and aggressive in the beginning?
I mean, thanks for this question, because in all the interviews I got till now, nobody ever asked me about the takeoff, but the takeoff was one of my biggest challenges.
Yeah.
Because, you know, that plane is so powerful, so light. And we even made it lighter because I didn't have enough space. I wanted to take off in a way to be airborne before the exit of tunnel number 1. But the problem was that tunnel number 1 was curved, is not straight. So if I was putting myself in the middle of tunnel number 1, I would have looked into the wall. So that's why I'm all to the far left. So that's the farthest point where I could push the plane, keeping it straight forward, looking out and seeing the entrance of the second tunnel. And this was, again, another problem because in reality, I didn't have that much of a takeoff run available, because you can take off in about 90 meters with my airplane. But when you do that takeoff, you can't take off smoothly. You can't go off and stay 30 centimeters, because my aim was for the first till the entrance of tunnel number 2, I wanted to be at 30 centimeters from the ground, because I knew that there was a lift increase at the entrance of tunnel number 2. So I said, if I don't react quickly, at least I have more margin over my head. So I said, I will enter at 30 centimeters and then I will continue climbing to 70 centimeters, which is what I did. But you have to be aggressive also, because you don't see, when you sit inside the edge, you don't see forward. So I could not see anything. So I had to be very aggressive on the very first part till I raised the tail. And that's why you see that rudder movement, because I had to keep it straight, but I could not, I had to use my peripheral vision, which was 2 walls, basically. I had no other reference. And one wall was very, very close, was basically my wingspan, my half wingspan. So we're talking about 3.5 meters, something more. And the other one was a lot bigger, was double. So I had to play with my peripheral vision, but I had to play with the lights on top, which were inclined. So I could not follow those. So I had to immediately raise my tail, but then I had to slow down, not to be ballooning on the lift off. And that's what I did, basically. And that's what I trained at home. That was part of my homework.
Yeah, that was fascinating, because you were on the far left, and Kayla and I both fly Taildraggers, and we know that when you add the power, your airplane's gonna want to tend to move left. So you had to really be active on the right rudder, but you didn't have a lot of room on either side. So just it's back to that reaction precision balance that you said you were working the whole time.
Yeah, I worked a lot also on my coordination, hand-eye coordination and foot-eye coordination. I'm in love with foot-eye coordination. In the air race, if there is something that is really, really crucial and very, very difficult to have, is that foot movements precise, to be coordinated. So when you see an airplane in the air race going up and down like a dolphin in the chicane, you can understand, pilots can understand, and experienced pilot like you can easily understand that is not coordinated flight. And I always been training and working hard on being a very coordinated pilot at high speed and fast roll rates. And I worked even harder these last months to be ready for this takeoff. And it was very important for me to train that and to practice. And I mean, you saw that it's all about precision, this project.
I think your speed going through the tunnel was like 245 kilometers per hour, roughly 150 miles an hour. How'd you decide on that is the right speed?
Yeah, I mean, the speed was not that, I mean, everywhere is written that speed, but in reality, that's an average speed. That was an average speed taken from the whole tunnel. So I'm entering in 250 kilometers per hour, let's say, in the second tunnel, if you take only that one, and I'm exiting at 278 kilometers per hour, so about 280 kilometers per hour. So we decided this speed with engineers. So at the beginning, the person that gave me this speed as an indication was Peter Bergenier. So I asked Peter at the beginning, what you suggest as a speed, 100, 110, 120, 130, full speed, what do you think? And then he suggested 120 as a minimum speed, which was absolutely an amazing advice, because when I started then testing, not in the tunnel, but testing on normal runways and everything, I realized that 120 was giving me the right attitude to have a nice sight, a nice view outside the plane. And then with the engineers, we discussed if I could go faster, because I wanted actually to try to go faster. But the fastest you go, the higher all the aerodynamics effects will be. So everything that I mentioned before, increase, decrease in lift, everything was going to be, of course, higher. Plus, you know, it's also about having a fixed number for them to simulate the whole path. So we decided to stick on 120. In reality, the plan was 120 at the entrance of tunnel number 2, and then I wanted to keep that speed or a little bit higher till the shape change, because the shape change of tunnel number 2 was very, very challenging, because at that point I would have had a decrease in lift. And that's also another thing that I didn't want to, I wanted to nail, I wanted to react properly. And I decided that after that point, I would have gone full throttle. And that's what I did. That's why I'm exiting at the highest speed. So after that point, when I tick that critical point, I said, okay, now the tunnel is square. I just have 500 meters. Let's go full throttle. But one of the reasons of going full throttle was because I had the exit. And at the exit, the highway starts to turn. Yeah. So I had to be fast and crisp in the exit. Not too crisp, but I had to be crisp. And to be crisp, you need speed. Otherwise, you risk to G-stall the plane. So I wanted to simply have that energy to be able to have a nice and sharp pull-up and get out of the highway and the light post.
And I imagine those were your target speeds, but you never glanced at your airspeed indicator, right? You probably set your power to what you'd practiced, that trained to where you knew would get you that speed, and you didn't mess with it until you went full power at the end. Is that right?
Exactly. I mean, you could not look anywhere else than your aiming point. And in the tunnel number 2, your aiming point is a fake exit, because the tunnel number 2 has a rise. So it goes uphill, then levels. And in the square part, which is the last 500 meters of a 1.730 kilometers, he's flat. So if you go, for example, at the exit of tunnel number 2 and you look back into it, you don't see the exit. You don't see anything. You just see the shape change, and that's it. So when you go inside the tunnel number 2, I could only see the end of the round shape with the bright light coming from the last 500 meters. But I could not see clearly a square or anything that looked like an exit. And when you are flying so close to the ground, and not only to the ground, but to everything that is around you, as you said, you can't move your eyes out of your aiming point. And I was using my peripheral vision to keep the height. So to basically to understand my height change using some reference I had when I entered the second tunnel, so that I could understand if I was going too high or too low. But I was never looking at the speed. So I could not know exactly the speed. And I have to say that I did a mistake. In the entrance of tunnel number 2, I was supposed, as we discussed, to be at 120 knots, but I was at 125 knots. And 120 knots was because the bullet time camera system, which is 85 cameras around the tunnel entrance, were supposed to catch me like in the Matrix movie. And this was made, unfortunately, just half of it. So if you see the video in the BTS, you can see that half of it worked out. So the cameras are actually working. So they stop me, they freeze me, and they can go around me, but just on one side and not all around the tunnel. And this was my fault. Was not the camera and the media guys crew, which were amazing, but was my fault because I entered 5 knots too high. And we tested and we set the cameras with the laser that was catching me before entering there at that speed. So the laser was activating the cameras considering a speed of 120 knots. And I was a little bit too fast.
You know what, Dario, I think, taking off out of a tunnel, not being able to look at your airspeed indicator, I think we'll spot you 5 knots.
Agreed.
Yeah. They were happy anyway, so I was happy. They were happy.
I suspect they were. Yeah. And so when I watched your video, I saw you took off in a dark tunnel, transition into light outside, transition back into a dark tunnel, transition back outside. and all of that in a span of about 45 seconds. Is that where you thought the most risk was in all those transitions in and out and in and out?
Yeah, I mean, the light transition was quite delicate. That's why also we train with the lights. And that's why I was telling you about the glasses going shading a full part of the eyes. And another thing that was a problem was a transition between the airflow that you have inside a tunnel, which is always on one direction. Then you get out and you have 300 meters where you don't know the air exactly what will do. And so these both transitions were a problem. For the light, as I told you, I trained a lot with these glasses. So basically all my training was, or most of my training was using these glasses. So to get used to it, I slept inside the tunnel in a camper the day before. So I spent my time 2 meters from the airplane. So they put a caravan. I asked to be there so that I could not only get used to the light and those yellow and red lights of the tunnel, to the darkness, but I could also get used to the smell, to the sound, everything. The guys were working still the whole night, and that sound was kind of getting me used to the sound I would have had with the plane, because also the sound that you hear inside the cockpit is different, because there is a lot of echo. So it's really, really, really different from what you hear usually. So all this was to get used to that. And
wow,
try different.
That's really fascinating to me, Dario, because one of the things we like to try to emphasize when people are in training is don't overlook the basics. And the basics, not near as complicated as what you were going through, but for us GA pilots, that is to sit in your airplane and know exactly where your switches are and where you keep your iPad or your pencil or whatever, and get used to how the seatbelt snaps and how to just all those things. At time you can sit in there and just get yourself immersed in your environment. Means you just have to think about those things less, and you can focus on the really complicated things. And it's so interesting to see that you were doing that on a really, complicated scale. It's the same concept though. You were trying to get used to all those elements and take them out of the way as being a factor to you, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to do, is to get used and to make myself familiar with all the basics and have nothing disturbing me. So nothing had to disturb me, which was the basics also of my training. So when we started to train, the first thing, as we said, is okay, we have all the dynamic effect, everything, but it doesn't matter if I'm fast and precise to react when my body is not working properly. And maybe I'm having, I don't know, I'm having some disturb. I have a shoulder that is in pain. I have my right hand that doesn't really work properly because I feel that I'm tired on the head. All this has to be fixed first. So the basics has to be fixed. So I have to be fully fit, perfectly focused on the task, and nothing had to disturb me, like the light, like the sound difference, the light difference, the darkness, and then they change out to light again. All this had to be all like ticked out and filtered. So I wanted to be able to filter all this so that all my body, all my brain, everything was focused only on one task, which was flying smoothly and precise through a solid obstacle, out and then in again.
Intense focus for 45 seconds.
I mean, I had to learn when to blink. So if you check the video, you were talking about the speed. I didn't look at the speed. So there was only one moment I knew I had to look at the speed, and I knew how to do it. I prepared myself to do it in the proper way, in the proper timing, which was few meters before the exit of tunnel number 2. If you look at the video, you will see my eyes going down twice, I think, before the exit. And that's because I have to check my speed before I pull, because if I had the wrong sensation of the speed and then I exit the tunnel safely and I'm only at 85 knots or 95 knots and I pull like hell trying to pull 6-7 Gs, the plane will stall. And then I would destroy the whole project just because I didn't get the sensation of the feeling of the speed correct, which could have happened. It didn't, but it could have happened.
Yeah,
and
because
that's the only moment I'm looking down.
Looking at that exit, I think the road curves a little bit. So as you were coming out of the exit, those light poles looked to me
Yeah.
like they were really pretty close to you as coming out. So our natural tendency would be to think, oh, he made it through the tunnel. He's made it. Well, not quite yet. He's still got to get out from under those light poles, right?
Yeah. You have the light poles on the left, and I had a hill coming on the right with the big parking area for the construction works of the highway. And so I had to check my speed, and that was the moment I knew I could do it, just before the exit, and I had to do it. So I trained for that, and that's why on that moment I tried to, just because the exit is quite big, the square exit was quite bigger than the rest of the tunnel. So those 500 meters at the end were quite more relaxing than those. So I prepare myself to do that, and I know that I have to do it. So, but when I was talking about moving, when you were talking about moving the eyes, there is the blinking. So you don't want to blink too much, because you're gonna lose that focus on all the environment that is surrounding you. So when we're doing the simulation with that big screen where I'm touching the colors that the trainers tells me to touch quickly and precisely on the balance board, the neck pull, I was not blinking. I trained not to blink the whole 44 seconds of the run. The training were a bit longer, were almost 50 seconds.
Yeah.
But then the trainer told me, okay, now you don't blink. That's perfect. But now you have to blink. You have to choose 2 or 3 times where you blink, because you have to clean your eyes. Because when you will be there, you have to have your eyes perfectly clean and fresh to go through all the details that you can capture. And that's when he said, you have to decide, because he said, you are the pilot, you know when the safe moments are to blink. So decide. So I decided to blink after each critical moments. And one moment was at the exit of tunnel number 1, which was after the takeoff, which was very critical. And at the exit, I had 300 meters of open sky, so I could blink. And in case there was something, I could still pull up. And then the other moment was after the entrance of tunnel number 2, where I would have had the decrease in lift. So that's where you will see me blinking another time, the second time. And the third time was after the shape change of the tunnel number 2 from round to square. And that's the third time I'm blinking. These are the only 3 times I'm blinking. And I prepare myself and train myself to do it in those moments while doing doing these trainings.
That is amazing, Kayla. Can you imagine that? You literally do not have time to blink.
No, I can't imagine it one bit. I mean, my allergies are terrible right now with dry eyes. Training yourself not to blink, it's got to be a hard task to do. That's incredible. Dario, I'm really curious, you talk in your videos about the tunnel being your next step to push your personal boundaries. And as we're all pilots here, pilots listening, we all set our personal minimums and our personal boundaries. How did you get the idea to fly through a tunnel to push your personal boundary?
I mean, it's really not about personal boundaries. It's about, there is a lot of science in this project that I wanted to explore, so was more about what I've been going through the mind of most of the pilots around the world, because I can't believe that nobody of you have ever thought what could happen if a plane flies through a tunnel. So I'm sure that someone has been thinking that, like me. So I don't think I'm the first, and maybe we're the last one now, because it's been done. but was more to explore what was to use science, which I really love. The science of flying, I think, is fascinating, and I think that there is so much still to explore and to understand. And I always tell myself that the day I will not get out of a plane after a flight and without learning anything from that flight, which can be any kind of flight, then that's the moment I have to stop flying, because I'm overestimating myself. So my ego is too big, So every minute of flight can teach us something. So it's about learning. It's not about setting boundaries or limits or minimum. After flying through a tunnel, then anything should be looking very easy to me, and it's not. Everything has its specific challenges and different. So we have to be very grounded and understand that when we are flying, we are in an environment that we are not made for. So it's important to learn every time we fly. And again, the day I will land from a flight and I will say, okay, I did not learn anything today, then that's the moment I will stop flying. So I will now continue. I will continue and try to continue to push boundaries of aviation and the human side of aviation and the science side, if it's possible. But that's only to explore and to learn and try to learn and try to understand what I mean, birds are flying through tunnels. So we had just to follow their path and try to see what happens on the plane.
That helps explain, Dario, why your colleagues say about you in different podcasts and periodicals. They say about you that you're very safety focused, which some people watching this would have not thought that, but it really is actually the key to doing the kind of adventurous flying you do safely, is that whole scientific mindset you take to it.
Yeah, I've been always very, very hard on safety with my students when I was teaching. The first thing I did when I arrived in the flight school that hired me at my very first day as an instructor, the first thing I did, I went to the briefing room and I said, guys, you don't have a flight safety board. So then how can we put the reports? How can we do that? So, and the first time I was teaching, I learned aerobatics and the first thing I learned was spinning. So the first thing I did, I went to the head of training of the school. I was a young instructor with almost no experience. I said, why don't we include this kind of upset recovery training in the PPL? And we are talking about 2017. So there was no, 2007. So we're not talking about UPRT was not there, or advanced UPRT, all these things that are there. So I'm that kind of person. So that's why I push on saying I'm not a daredevil. I really think safety is paramount, and I'm really scared of flying. So if you ask me, are you scared of flying? I am. If you ask me, are you scared of flying through a tunnel? Oh my God, I am. I mean, I was really, really scared. But that's what helps me to mitigate and to train and to get better and better and better. And that's why I love the science behind the flight, because we can learn so much and we can improve safety so much. And when you tell me about having the basics very skilled and not on a knowledge based, so that you don't have to think about where your iPad is. This is for me fascinating. This is for me absolutely what we have to do. I mean, these are small details, and the details are what makes difference in safety.
Yeah, those are such helpful words. And for all of the pilots to realize that for a 45-second mission, you went through over a year of training, had 40 people on your support team, and all the advanced metrics that you went through. It's helpful for all of us to understand what all went through that to make it safe and exciting. So I encourage people, if you don't know about Dario, read a little bit about his background. He's got a fascinating background about how he came into aviation and had to leave it and came back to aviation. Dario, you're an inspiration. Thanks so much for your time today and for what you did and the excitement you brought.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dario.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.